September 1st, Friday, 1893. There was a sort of dinner party tonight being hosted by the Count. A good handful of people showed up, but one in particular was a younger man who was golden from head to toe. He talked in great detail, but I hardly listened to what the man was actually saying. Not like he was talking to me anyway. I hardly seemed to exist to him. But I could tell this man was very invested in Miss Charlotte, but she hardly seemed to care about giving him the time of day. However, there was one conversation that she really seemed to get invested in. This conversation in particular involved an older man with dark brown hair and a stern aura. At one point, the golden boy said something that seemed to greatly upset my mistress, so she got up in a huff and stormed out the room as elegantly as possible. I really wish I caught what he said. She looked and sounded so hurt. I went to check on Miss Charlotte as soon as I could, and found her somberly draped over her lounge chair. "Miss Charlotte?" I began. "Are you all right?" She didn't look at me. Her eyes were averted and fixated on the floor, but she spoke.
Lisette?
"Yes?"
Do you think taking one's own life is a sign of madness? Do you think it's a sin and a horrid crime, a cross to bear and be frowned upon?
Well, I don't really believe in sins myself. That would require believing in God, though I suppose I can see why people generally wouldn't consider it sane to take one's own life. She suddenly got into this glum sort of silence as though she was hoping for a different answer.
It is seen as justified and understandable when a warrior takes their life when under attack or taken prisoner. In Japan, they have this form of suicide where it's seen as an honourable way to die.
I suppose circumstances do depend on the situation. I came up to the woman who looked to be in mourning and sat upon the seat. "Are you all right?"
It doesn't feel fair to make light of someone's melancholy. In most cases, people take their own lives because of despair. So why do people think that it's all right to belittle it so easily?
"You're dodging my question. I've asked it twice now."
I'll live,
She paused and turned on her back.
The memories are back. I'm constantly reminded over and over again. And I feel like a failure. Like I couldn't do anything. I should have.
I didn't understand what she was saying, but I wanted to help all the same. I laid down next to my charming mistress, snuggling myself close to her in an embrace. She held me back, and I found my face smothered in her breast. After some time passed, Miss Charlotte kissed my forehead and stood up to ready herself for sleep. She thanked me and asked me to join her for bed.
September 1st, Friday, 1893. Today I decided to change things up and host a dinner party like I used to. Blackwood did not come like I hope he might. But then again, neither did John, Paul, and Molly. Instead, the Beatons had been present, though just father's son, as the mistress had been taking to small fits and would be best suited at home, along with some of the family of the Prosser twins like the Griffiths and Farleys. I heard that the youngest of the Farleys, Jasper, I believe, has been one of Charlotte's many pursuers, though he did not show up tonight as he had other plans for a Friday night. Duchy Mabel Griffith, on the other hand, seems to have taken a shining to me and desired my countship. However, it was the Beatons who caused a stir that night. I cannot recall exactly how we got on the topic, but I believe it might have been something along the lines of someone asking the good doctor how work at the asylum was going.
"Well,"
he began,
"we have hired a new surgeon that insists that our priorities should be removing the uterus of our suicidal girls. The idea was also suggested to castrate the suicidal men in our care, but that doesn't seem to be higher on his list."
I nearly felt my palm slap the table as I had a mouthful, but Mabel Griffiths cries out,
"Dear heavens! Such a topic!"
Charlotte, however, seemed to be in an encouragingly curious mood and asked why.
Why does he think that this is a priority or even a necessity?
The doctor answered,
"Well, Miss Dunkelheit, do you know where the word hysteria originates from?"
It comes from the Greek word for uterus.
"That is correct. Illness of the mind tends to be a woman's ailment, and is something she can carry and pass on to her children. The surgeon is prioritizing the suicidal because of his faith, but I do understand why it is wise to keep this epidemic from spreading and causing more unnecessary loss."
Theodore suddenly chimed in.
Is that so? How fascinating! Modern science has come so far.
"We do not discuss this matter within these walls," I snarled. "We especially do not discuss them at the dinner table." Mabel Griffiths added,
"Oh, most certainly! I agree with you full-heartedly, Count. What a dastardly conversation. I'm slightly appalled that young Charlotte should find herself interested.
There was a small silence for a little time, but then Charlotte started again and asked,
Is there actually science proving that insanity is related to a uterus in a woman? I mean, clearly men can become mentally unfit as well.
Well, that is debatable.
Dr. Beeson responded.
Yes, men are also susceptible to states of madness, but theirs is usually caused by circumstance, nor does it seem like they carry it onto others. Women are usually born with excessive emotions in the first place, and then tend to have no trigger for their mental fits. It would seem that if a woman was suicidal in life, her daughters will also be.
I cleared my throat and demanded, No more of this.
Oh, but dear Count, can you not find yourself invested in such a topic as well?
He turned his directions to his father.
Do you have any opinion on your surgeon's suggestion?
Bart answered,
I do not know if it is necessarily to go as far as to remove every single one of the uteruses in our girls. Yes, we do not want them to further reproduce, but chances are she might not leave if she is truly suicidal. There might never be a cure for her ailment, and her place will be forever in the asylum.
Well, if that's the case, should we not just round up any ladies born of the suicidal or insane and throw them into the asylum? Do it before it's too late. Keep them off the streets and put them where they belong.
Charlotte immediately stood up from her chair in a brash movement, almost knocking it over.
I'm sorry.
Her voice shook as she spoke.
I'm suddenly not feeling very well. Please excuse me.
Just as quickly as she stood, was just as quickly as she exited the room.
Is she going to be all right?
I turned to the insolent boy and demanded, I want you to leave Dunkelheit Manor this instant. You are no longer welcomed here for your impudent and disrespectful clamor.
What did I say?
Do you not know about Charlotte's mother or sister?
She has a sister?
Had. They're both dead, self-murdered, or suicide as you will. And you essentially just told my Totcher that she is not mentally fit for polite society and should be locked up in a booby hatch. And you kept insisting to talk about this topic despite my request to stop. So you've disrespected both the master and mistress of the household.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
I turned to his father. Bartholomew, I would advise you teach your boy to keep his mouth shut. You're also not innocent of ignoring my request either, might I add. On top of the fact that you knew why.
I should go apologize.
Theodore stood from his seat as well, almost ready to leave the room. No, you should make your leave.
But
just go! His father tried to add.
But Count, it was just a moment of ignorance on his part.
I was not interested in excuses and continued. I do not even think of returning or making any further visits for Charlotte. You cannot ever call her again. Not that you were ever allowed to in the first place. Bartholomew tried to argue his case more, but his son suddenly got compliant and unusually quiet for him as he asked,
I understand. I doubt she would want anything to do with me now anyhow.
The Beesons left, and shortly after, so did the family of the Prossers and their extended family. I tried checking on Charlotte by peering into the darkness of her room to find her and Lisette snugged in her bed very closely. Perhaps there are several uses for the foolish girl after all. At least Charlotte is not alone in her suffering.